All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Twin Speaks, our Twin Peaks Watch Party podcast. We are on episode number 6, and today's episodes will be season 2, episode 2, Coma, and episode 3, The Man Behind the Glass. Here we go.
Yeah, Chins James is a very handsome young man. There's no doubt about that. We'll get onto that in a minute. So there we go, guys. That was episode 2, season 2, Coma. Lot, a lot happened, I guess. A lot of revelations. Take us away, Scotty.
Um, I'm trying to think where to start with this one because, yeah, there were a lot of revelations, but I think the overarching um, thing that I got from this episode is that we definitely had um, some more weird shit being confirmed, and that,
Mm,
and I think and not the most important one, but the fucking old food service guy is real. He's not a hallucination, and he needs to be terminated immediately for poor service and not being able to
mm,
remember shit. And yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
so this whole time I was thinking supernatural,
Mm,
and it seems that really it's just like some kind of alien involvement.
mm,
Although I'm not certain where they're gonna go with this because there's clearly some kind of like technology or influence at play that is not clearly defined.
mm,
And the thing with that uh, that I how do I say this? I'm not certain that this is a good direction for the show. Like
mm,
supernatural influence would maybe account for a lot of the things that we've seen or a lot of the things that the characters are feeling. Aliens, not so much. Like
mm.
it seems there was uh, a trend, and I saw some of this with the X Files, that um, the alien conspiracy theory is so mysterious that there's a lot of mixed emotions about it, and people are so feeling such trepidation over it, and they,
Mm,
uh, and that was a theme for a lot of sci-fi shows in the 90s.
mm,
And I feel some of that here, but if they are going
mm.
the route of aliens, then they really need to tie up how apparently these aliens are doing everything they possibly can to make it feel as weird as all fucking possible. Um, Case in point, we go to deliver Meals on Wheels to uh, Happy Gilmore's grandmother, and she
Mm,
doesn't like creamed corn. And
mm.
there's this weird ass fucking little kid there in a
That's her
tuxedo.
grandson.
Are we sure about
Y-
that though?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she said it's her grandson. He's practicing magic. That's why he's wearing a tuxedo. And he's pretty good at it, obviously.
Okay, but is he an alien? Okay,
Mm,
you know, because clearly this kid has a screw loose or something. He doesn't act like a normal kid.
no, that's
He's
fair to say.
he's practicing magic, which includes cupping his hands in just the right way to magically transport creamed corn from her plate to his hands, and then it disappears. Great magic trick, kid. What the fuck is this all about? Um, and Donna is just taking this in as if it's normal.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, you'd like to think if that was you in that situation, you'd not be,
like
I mean, not freaked out, but like reacting more strongly.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, that's weird."
Okay,
Is that
so
really Donna? Really?
yeah, let's pick that scene a little bit more apart though. Clearly, this old woman was um, distraught. I would
Mm,
use. She clearly was in some kind of mental anguish. Now,
mm,
what I would assume right off the bat is that the presence of this kid or whatever this entity is that's presenting as a kid in her room is the cause of her distress, at least in some kind of related way. Maybe not
mm,
directly, but it's definitely related to what seems to be causing her distress. Not only does she hesitate when Donna is at the door and she says, "Go ahead and come on in," and she comes in and um, just throughout the whole scene, she is not a happy person. So she's definitely got
mm,
some kind of anxiety, some kind of issue, and she seems to kind of like readily accept that Donna is now delivering Meals on Wheels,
mm,
but it almost feels like sorry for Donna or fears for
mm.
her,
Yeah.
referencing that Laura's dead, and um, it almost feels like she was trying to relay to Donna that I fear that you're going to meet the same kind of fate as Laura.
Mm,
Um, and then the reference to hospital food, which we established in the last
mm,
episode, is apparently some kind of, you know, at the very least, the people that are in the kitchen at the hospital are not following FDA and USDA standards on how to prepare food. Um,
indeed.
but at worst, maybe it's some kind of delivery system for alien toxins or biological components or things that are negatively and adversely affecting these town people. It
Mm,
certainly doesn't look like good food. I'm reminded of in that last episode. I think it was uh, Pete or Jacoby or whoever it was, smelling the food and
mm,
instantly turning their nose up. Can't eat it, can't even look at it. We're going to put it away from
mm,
ourselves. So it seems like in this reality where we find ourselves in Twin Peaks, there is this component of either the food at the hospital or food and or water in general being a delivery system to the people in Twin Peaks, in particular through the Meals on Wheels program, which is a direct delivery thing, or through delivery of food at the to the patients in the hospital. Something is being given to them that does not pan out as good for their future.
mm,
And then to wrap up that whole scene, first of all, the child speaking French, which we would have only maybe known if it weren't for the subtitles, because
mm.
it wasn't clear what he said, and the subtitles just said speaking in French. Oh well, thanks
Yeah, yeah,
subtitles. What the fuck
yeah.
did he say in French? Um,
Maybe we'll
and
find out later.
right, and why does this kid that appears to be like maybe 8 know French
Mm,
and magic and how to swiftly remove creamed corn that the old lady doesn't
mm.
like? Um, you know, and also
Strange to say the least.
and also uh, it that plate of food that was delivered to the old lady from Meals on Wheels, which my understanding was that was coming from the diner.
Is, yeah.
She said, well, they used to bring me hospital food. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there.
Mm,
Why is the Meals on Wheels being delivered by Laura coming from the hospital and from instead of the diner? And it
it,
certainly looks like a plate of normal food rather than whatever that slop
yeah,
was they were serving at the
indeed.
hospital.
it's hard to know for certain. I assume that Mrs. Tremond is has been ill for a while, like bedridden for a while, had been getting food delivered from the hospital for some kind of service that they did, or somebody was helping her out with. Maybe she was in hospital previously and they were kind of still keeping an eye on her when she'd got home, and then at some point she'd gone, keep your crappy hospital food. The Double R Diner's running a Meals on Wheels service. I'm going to sign up to that instead. And because she's like maybe ill and old, she
Right.
isn't making the cognitive difference between the two necessarily. Then
Right.
so her mind, she's like, they used to bring me hospital food, and she's not understanding how or why that changed necessarily.
Right. Um, and then finally the kid, after Donna leaves, telling the old lady she seemed like a very nice girl, ominously.
Mm.
Um,
It's a little bit
and
ominous
yeah,
coming from a little kid.
yeah, yeah. We're about to meet the children of the corn here or something, and a cream corn. There we go.
Yeah.
Um, and the advice from the old lady that Mr. Smith lives next door. He probably knew Laura better than I did, but he never
Yeah.
leaves his house. And then we get a call later. Donna's going to be meeting with Mr. Smith to
Mm.
get some information. So
Indeed.
interesting scene there.
Mm.
And I mean, like my first instinct after the revelation from so I got his name was Major Garland Briggs is Bobby's
Yeah,
dad.
Garland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's playing a more a dramatic role now. It's starting to appear more. Um, so after his revelation, my first inclination is that this kid is almost definitely some kind of alien, or some kind of is he actually her grandson?
Mm.
I would be apt to think
You feel
not,
not.
but
Mm.
some kind of alien influence there, and that may be the reason why she's feeling the trepidation and the fear, and clearly whatever is going on with that, maybe it's Meals on Wheels, maybe it's something else that's related to all of that and what Laura was doing and why Laura was doing all of these different things. There's some kind of negative influence, potentially aliens there.
Mm.
Uh, so then talking about
Yeah. Did you want to continue with Major
yeah,
Briggs? Because obviously
yeah, I think
we
so
had the scene with
because
the log lady, and then
mhm.
we had the later scene towards the end of the episode when he met up with Cooper and passed on his message.
Yeah, so the log lady scene was kind of interesting, because Briggs, in his no nonsense, very strict military, but still kind of kind hearted and compassionate guy.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that just randomly beats his son because he think that's going to be the thing that
Mm.
creates a better man out of him. He's not sadistic. He actually
No.
seems to be fairly compassionate. And he took Log Lady in stride
Yeah.
and what she was saying. And Log Lady was like, "Well, do you hear what I hear?" And he said, very matter of factly, but still kindly, "No, I do not, ma'am. I'm sorry." And she says, "Okay, then I will translate for you." And she says that he is to deliver a message, and he knows
Mm.
exactly what she's talking about. And that later comes out to be he's going to tell Cooper that they received this message, kind of like SETI or some other
Yeah.
type of government project to monitor radio waves coming from space. And it's just nothing. It's just garbage and garbled stuff, meaningless.
Mm.
And then suddenly they get the message at the end, right at the time that Cooper was being shot, that the owls are not what they seem. And
Mm.
then a little bit of space, and then Cooper, his name being relayed over and over again for a time.
Right.
And so I think if we couple that with what we have heard previously from Log Lady about the owls flying around on the night of the murder and they were everywhere, but now they are not what they seem. Okay, so we had previously, well, I previously had thought that the owls were some kind of like surveillance group trying to keep an eye on everything and watch the happenings of the major players that are involved in this, which clearly the murderer is one of them. Um, if they're not what they seem, then maybe they aren't a surveillance group, is what I'm driving at.
Mm.
Maybe there's some kind of other ulterior motive there to whomever the owls are and what they are supposed to represent.
Mm.
Um, but that's all I got out of that, except for then Cooper then had a dream sequence where he saw the murderer's face again at the bottom of the bed, and it was his face kind of transmorphed into an owl's.
Mm.
So
Quite suggesting, at least in Cooper's dream, that this Bob individual is maybe related to, or is in fact himself an owl, whatever the owls are that
right.
are not what they seem to be. Uh,
Well, I mean, if there's anything that Lynch is good at is putting layers upon layers upon layers of
yeah, it's not for everybody, but
right.
if you're into that, yeah, there's much more to come.
Yeah, I also noticed, just as a side note, that there was only, I think, 8 or 10 episodes in season one, and
Yeah,
in
just say
season two, there's 22, I think.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure what happened with the production
It
of
was
that.
more
Um,
than double the first season.
yeah, and especially with the how it follows on. I like I say, I just take it as one thing. I don't really think it was two separate seasons, but
Right.
yeah, interesting. I guess maybe much like you have like a pilot episode, they had like a pilot season. Let's do 8 episodes, see where this goes, and it was probably far more popular at the time than they expected. So they're like, oh well, in that case, we'll give you the budget to do 20. How many episodes do you want to do? Lynch was and Frost were probably like, oh well, we can do 22. And they're like, okay, go for it. But
Right.
uh, I mean, we'll probably never know. I'm sure there's
Right.
reasons behind all that.
Um. So let's continue on with the connection here of the vision of this murderer. Supposedly, Bob will label him. Um, Now that we know there's some kind of connection there between the owls and Bob potentially being an owl and the owls not being what they seem, we have this further connection of Leland Palmer, who
Mm,
kind of did not stop the deal with the Icelanders, but certainly isn't doing it any favors by calling the one guy and telling him about the fire. Um,
no.
but that almost seems to be kind of like a side note to all of this. Then they focus
Yeah.
on him seeing this poster of Bob and artist rendering and saying, I know this guy. So
Yeah.
Leland actually recognizes this guy. He used to go to his grandfather's summer house on Pearl Lakes, and this guy used to live next door.
Yeah.
So he knows him, and now he's gonna go to Sheriff Truman and let him know, that this is a potential lead for this, and he
Mm,
thinks he knows who it is, and this person of interest they're gonna go after, or at least find out more information about him, and then immediately after that, after Leland walks out. Ben Horn saying to his brother, "Should we kill Leland?" And And Jerry, well, see, this is what I got from little exchange afterward is that Jerry says, is this real or some kind of twisted dream? It almost seems to me
Mm.
like now all of a sudden we have far more information about what the fuck Ben and Jerry are into besides ice cream. And it's like suddenly Leland is potentially about to be murdered by Ben and Jerry simply because he recognized Bob.
Mm.
And that now maybe makes him a liability, which suggests to me that Ben and Jerry know Bob, know who Bob is, know that Bob murdered Laura, and Leland is now a liability because he knows who Bob is.
Mm. If that were true, so you feel that if we assume that is true for a moment, then it's just a complete coincidence that Leland also recognizes this Bob individual, and they're like, "Oh, okay, that we had no idea about that." Presumably, um, it's all very intriguing.
It's
But
it's kind of interesting that Leland just happened upon this wanted
yeah,
poster in their office on a stack of magazines
yeah,
away from the desk and all that. Um, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were going to ask me something?
no, no, he probably would have come across it at some other point because I assume, as
Yeah,
we saw with Andy, taping them up around town.
and
But it's
himself.
curious. It clearly caught his eye from across the room, and he was like, "Oh, what is that? Let me have a look." But when he said he recognized him, he was very sure of himself, as you say, to the point where, um, yeah, this guy lives next door to my grandfather's summer house, so I remember him. Doesn't remember who he is exactly, but he recognizes his face very clearly. Now,
Right.
um, maybe some kind of inconsistency here, or maybe Leland is misremembering. But he said when he was a boy. Now, if we assume that Leland is in his mid 40s, and as a boy, even if he was a teenager, he's recognizing Bob's face as he remembers him looking 30 years ago. Now, you would think that uh, he would look a little bit different, or maybe older.
Right.
Um, over the span of 30 years. So there's some inconsistency there somewhere, but it is very curious that, at least in Leland's own mind, he's like, "Oh my god, I know this guy. This is some weird guy who lived next to my grandfather's summer house. I remember him from when I was a kid." Um, and he seemed somewhat disturbed by it.
Well, I'm 99% sure that there's some kind of exterior negative influence on the people of Twin Peaks now.
Mm,
One thought that had occurred to me a while back when we were talking about Bobby and Mike
mm,
versus Bob and Gerard or whatever his name
yeah.
um, is that there was a potential time discrepancy. That maybe these
Mm,
are in fact Bobby and Mike, but they are a version of themselves from the future that has traveled back,
mm,
or an alternate universe type version of them that has somehow now infiltrated our
interesting.
current Twin Peaks. Okay, so those are potential things that we don't really have any kind of evidence for, but that would speak to that there is a
Mm,
time discrepancy that potentially that we don't know about or how that comes into play. And I would also say that there needs to be some kind of connection made there to the previous murder
mm,
and what that meant for why they went and murdered that person and then came over here and murdered Laura.
mm,
Yeah. um and I'm kind of shying away from some kind of like future selves coming back in time simply because of the demonic presence that was supposedly illustrated in Bob in
mm.
Ronette's vision sequence. and I'm leaning much more towards like a possession type deal, or I mean,
Mm,
see, that would make more sense to me logistically, that maybe he did look exactly like that 30 years ago when Leland was growing up, and he still looks the same now because he's been
yeah, he
possessed
hasn't
by
changed.
some kind of alien influence that whole time, or,
Mm, maybe.
so.
Um, but yeah, it's very clear when they went to see Ronette, just to hammer that home. Um, they had a drawing of Leo, and which she shook her head to and was like, "No, I don't." Not that she didn't recognize that him necessarily, because we established that she does in fact know Leo.
Right.
Um, but that when Cooper said, "Is this the man who hurt you?" She's like, "Nah." I'm sure maybe he has in some various ways, but then of course he shows the picture of this Bob character, to which he obviously reacts very violently. So it's kind of, we can assume that the third man, the person who killed Laura, the person who was in that train car with Laura and Ronette, was this Bob individual. I think that's reasonable to assume at this point,
Yeah.
unless there's more going on that meets the eye. As there always is.
And also about that scene when Ronette recognized Bob, she starts having a little bit of a fit. The heart monitor goes
Mm,
crazy. The nurse is, and she's
yeah,
thrashing about, and then the lights go out.
yeah,
So I found
because
that kind of interesting.
mm,
Maybe there was some kind of emotional thing within Ronette that caused the lights to go out. Um,
indeed.
I just thought that was kind of interesting. Um, so I think that's everything with that. So let's just touch on some of the oddball things here. First of all, uh, Cooper's former partner named Wyndham Earl has
Hmm.
completely vanished, and he's
Yes.
made aware of this by the other guy, and we don't know who he is. This is the first time his name is being introduced.
Mm.
Um, but I remember that in the episode there, they said something about he went crazy and then he vanished. It
Yeah.
seemed like.
Albert alluded to the fact that he was in some kind of mental health facility uh, of some kind, and he has just literally vanished. Now, we don't know anything about Wyndham Earl apart from he used to be Cooper's former partner. Um, for some reason, and Cooper said, "Oh, I thought he was retired." And Talbot was like, "Yeah, he's been spending his time in the local loony bin." Um, we don't know how or why that came to pass. And he has vanished, and nobody knows how or why. Um, to which Cooper seemed kind of that was of concern to him. That
Yeah.
was nothing he can do about it right now, but that's somewhat bothersome to him. Um, of course, we that's the only information we have about Wyndham Earl at this current juncture, what the implications of his disappearance may be.
Yeah, my only impression on that was that Cooper felt that this was some kind of a warning to
Mm,
himself, that he needs to be a little bit more aware of what's going on. Maybe it was just like banter branching off of him being shot, and being near
yeah.
death himself, but um, more so there was something that happened to Wyndham Earl that either A caused him to go crazy, or B, more importantly, caused him to disappear. That
Mm,
he uh, and that the going crazy part isn't necessarily as related, but the fact that he is no longer on the grid,
mm,
and this concerns Cooper because it means that something happened. And Cooper
mm,
realizes that, and sees it as something dangerous to himself.
mm,
Uh,
indeed. And to finish that scene, we see the Asian gentleman
Mhm.
sat at another table. The gentleman who was apparently has associations with Hong Kong and was trying to get hold of Josie about something previously. He was very intently keeping an eye on Cooper. For what reason remains to be seen.
Right.
Um, yeah, what else have we got, Sky?
So Andy supposedly is sterile,
Mm.
and apparently that's why he like can't use Scotch tape. And I don't know, like, God damn it, Andy. Um,
Bless his heart.
yeah,
He's I guess the
he's a
character
good
who's
man, yeah, but it's just like,
yeah.
God damn it, Andy.
He's mostly there for comic relief, I
Right.
assume, but he is also a legitimate character and a real person. But of course, the implication of that scene is if Andy is indeed sterile and Lucy is indeed pregnant, then obviously there is another man involved in with Lucy, which obviously she didn't outright deny that, and
It,
just clearly didn't want to talk about it either.
I could almost interpret Lucy's reaction as, oh shit.
Mm.
That must mean
Oh,
that,
yeah.
this other guy, and then just like, this this relationship between the two is almost far more interesting than anything else going on in the series now, because we want to know what the hell is going on
All right.
here with Andy and Lucy and this pregnancy now, and the apparent on and off again relationship that they
Mm,
had. It's almost like kind of taking center stage just as the B storyline, uh, and you definitely thirst and hunger to find out more details about exactly what's going on between these two.
absolutely.
Um, Also, Hank used to be a bookhouse boy, but
Yes,
apparently he
and
was either.
uh, uh
Go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna, yeah, not only a bookhouse boy, but also friends with Harry. Apparently,
Yeah.
something, obviously that was a long time ago, and a lot has changed because it seems to be the complete opposite of that now. His general attitude and distaste of Harry and everything he represents.
We as-
You upright law, man of the law and scum of the earth that Hank is, as he's presented to us. Yeah,
I
how they fell from grace, I don't know.
so we established that it happened a year and a half ago that Hank murdered Andrew, or
If indeed he did,
at least was
yeah,
involved with it in some way, knows about it
seems
at
to
the
be,
very least.
yeah.
Um, so I would surmise here that it's probably a minimum of 2 years ago
Mm,
that some kind of event happened that led to a falling out between Hank and Truman, and Hank
mm,
being uh, kind of kicked out of the Bookhouse Boys, or leaving of his own volition. Probably much longer than that, maybe 5 to 10 years. Uh, and maybe it was just along the lines of either Hank was corrupted, maybe by Ben Horn or something like that, the promise of money or whatever, but he was seen as a good enough guy at one point to be included in the Bookhouse Boys. So what happened to Hank along the way that caused this
mm,
thing, and caused him to leave? Um, it's almost like you're being led to believe that there there maybe is this omni-directional negative influence in Twin
mm,
Peaks that has caused literally half of the characters to turn evil. like
mm,
like you wouldn't assume Laura, as a 17, 18-year-old girl, is going to be involved with drugs, prostitution, sex with characters that are violent and enjoying it, and all these other things. What happened to Laura to bring her to that point? What happened to
Mm,
Hank to turn him away from being a bookhouse boy? And even further, the longer history of the Bookhouse Boys. What is this evil that they have been fighting for a
mm,
long time beyond just these people's lives? For
yeah.
many generations. And did that somehow fail at this point
Mm.
that would turn all of these people to the evil side? Maybe we're going to run into the Star Wars Emperor at some point here.
Maybe you might before we're done.
Yeah,
Ex- Expect anything, Sky.
yeah.
Uh, you got what's next? Anything else?
Leo in a coma, and he can
Mm.
stay there for all
Ah,
I
of
care.
course. Yeah, and Bobby and Shelley have a plan where he should be able to get disability money, $5,000 a month,
Yeah,
no small amount of money, but obviously she has to not press charges and play the role of his loving wife.
yeah.
I'll care for him at home, and they'll just pocket the cash. And
Don't do it,
Bob, she
Shelly.
wasn't sure about it, but Bobby was trying to convince her, and it
Yeah,
seems like she's, at least for now, going to go along with that plan.
yeah.
Um,
Bobby's still a piece of shit too.
of course, will he ever change? We'll see.
I hope not.
Um,
He needs to die.
he's just-
Um, and let's see who else. Call from a person to the department who wants to speak to Truman but won't identify himself, and
Indeed,
Lucy senses stranger danger.
yeah.
And
Only people like that could come to mind that I would potentially call would be Leland wanting to speak to Harry because he's recognised this weird gentleman on the wanted poster.
that's true.
Um, or which we didn't see or get mentioned this episode, Philip Gerard is still trying to get hold of Sheriff Truman to sell him some shoes.
Yeah.
But there's no reason I can think of why either one of those two individuals wouldn't want to give their name to Lucy. So,
Yeah, I mean, if Leland was, now attempting to get a hold of Truman and let him know, he's going to have to identify himself anyway, simply because it was his
mm,
grandfather's summer house, and
yeah,
those facts would come out in the wash anyway. Who he is in relation to how he knows this information and supposedly knows this suspect.
mm,
So I would say at this point it is not. However, my first instinct when hearing that scene was this is some other individual that we have not met yet
mm,
and don't know anything about, who is trying to relay some information to Truman but can't reveal himself because it would mean their life is in danger. Um,
yeah.
so I think we're going to get some more information about that in the coming episodes, but I am liable to believe it's somebody that we have not met yet or has only been mentioned in passing and we don't know who they really are.
Mm,
Um, and then the apparent building love triangle between James, Donna, and Maddie, in which
mm,
James needs to just stop what the fuck he's doing, and because Donna really loves him. She's loved
mm,
him the entire time. James appears to love Donna, but more passively. Like
yeah,
he was really in love with Laura, and now that
yeah.
Maddie appears to be becoming more like Laura, he's
Mm.
starting to just lend that to Maddie, and he's a fucking idiot. But
Yeah, and I think that is true. He is just an idiot. I don't think he's like maliciously
no,
scheming anything. I don't think he's even maybe consciously aware, but it's clear that he has an attraction to Maddie. And it seemed even more so that maybe Maddie has an attraction to him. As Urchins points out, James is very handsome, so it's natural that anyone would be interested. But obviously, that kind of upset. Donna's not stupid. Donna's
no.
actually very intelligent, and she's very in tune with a lot of things. And she clearly picked up on that just for a brief moment and reacted negatively. Let's hope that ends well for the three of them.
I don't have faith in that at all.
Mm.
Um,
uh,
but then immediately after that, Maddie having a more concrete vision of the murderer in the room
mm,
coming at her and
yeah,
being
very
scared to death by
disturbing.
that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Um, let's see. Is there anything else that I missed before the other thing? I don't think so. Oh, yeah. So earlier, Ben Horn calling Truman to say that Audrey has been missing,
Mm,
and has been for 2 days now. And Cooper seems to be very fond of her, and in talking to his Diane, and then that leads to um, Audrey uh, going into this private room and finding Emery, the manager of the store, and like presenting this real badass
yeah,
facade that
taking
she's
charge.
yeah, she's gonna strangle him with the vacuum cord if he doesn't provide her with the info she wants.
Yeah.
And okay, so he tells her that Ben Horn owns the entire thing. And an interesting addition to that, he owns everything, which leads
Mm,
me to believe that Ben Horn owns far more of the city than you might think. And
mm,
for maybe other nefarious purposes, not necessarily like owning the property, but having hold or control over
right.
people in a insidious means. Um, and somehow Audrey didn't think that this was going to come back to bite her in the ass, and we see um, Emery immediately went to Blackie to tell her what happened, and Blackie and Emery now know exactly who this is
Mm,
and what she's doing there, and she's in a world of trouble. Um,
yeah.
and then somehow it seems like Audrey broke into Blackie's office to use the phone to call Cooper. So at the very least, Cooper now has a lead on where Audrey is. Although
Yeah.
Audrey seemed to be a little bit stupid and didn't, quickly in 5 seconds say,
Yeah.
"I'm at One Eye Jacks, come save me."
Yeah. She's
What the
been
fuck,
weird about
Audrey?
it, but I
Um,
have faith that Cooper will figure it out.
yeah,
Um,
I'm sure he could trace the call or something like that.
yeah. Now, you'd like to think that Audrey being Ben's daughter, she'd not actually be in any actual danger now that her identity has been revealed to Blackie and
Yeah.
associates. But we've seen previously that Blackie and Ben are not exactly getting along. So it could be that Blackie will even use Audrey as some kind of leverage against Ben. Uh, again,
More so,
let's see how that pans out.
I'm leaning now towards Ben Horn being an extremely sadistic and evil person. Like,
Mm,
it was also revealed by Emery that Laura was not only there for just one
mm,
weekend at One Ajax as one of the perfume counter girls, but something was said by Emery that led me to believe that um, Ben Horn, who personally breaks in all of the girls, then had a relationship with Laura. So he knows
yeah.
exactly about Laura and what she did and who she was involved with and uh uh what's the word I'm looking for? What compromises Laura
Mm, yeah.
personally and spiritually and emotionally, because he would have known everything that was going on with her and
Mm.
personally had a relationship with her that weekend,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
and
What again
Ronan for
wasn't
that matter.
yeah, wasn't clearly stated, but uh adding the pieces together, you're right. Ben Horn obviously not only owns everything, he's also personally had sex with every girl that has ever worked there for any amount of time,
Right.
including Laura. Aside from the age difference, the fact that Laura was, you know, was you know, the daughter of a family friend
Yeah,
who,
his
you
lawyer.
know, he was around when Laura was a little girl, like hanging around and stuff. And he's like, and not to say that he's, you know, was thinking ahead of time, but you think that memory that of her being a child and a family friend would be like, oh, Laura, okay, well, you know, maybe I'll try and help you get out of this situation, or at the least, maybe I won't have sex with you. But I'm Benjamin Horn, so I don't give a fuck.
Right.
I'm gonna do whatever I want, including yeah, including Laura Palmer.
But then one more interesting thing that was said by Emery. Laura always got her way, just like you,
mm,
Audrey. Um,
yeah,
so that is an interesting thing to say about a girl who seems to have been just getting in deeper and deeper and deeper to things that are negatively harming her. Was it because she was actually continually actively seeking these things instead of just
mm,
being drawn into it, maybe against her will? Um, what exactly does that mean? Laura always got her way.
yeah, exactly. We have this interesting presented by this interesting dichotomy with Laura between her um in a few different ways, between her public image, where she's the homecoming queen, she's the most popular girl at school,
Mm,
everybody loves her, she helps with the Meals on Wheels, helps Johnny Horn, she does everything, for anyone. She's perfect and wonderful. And then we've got the dark secret side of her life where she's into drugs and sex parties and prostitution and hanging out with dangerous, nefarious individuals. And then we've also got this idea that she's the victim. Oh, poor Laura, she was murdered. Eh, Everybody feel bad for her, but then we've also got the other side of that where a few people have alluded to she's the one in
she
charge. She gets what she wants,
and she wanted to die.
and she wanted to die, and apparently, and indeed, if that is true, she got exactly what she wanted. So
Hmm.
very interesting. But I think that's everything I had on that episode there, Sky. I don't know
Yeah,
if you got anything else.
that's everything for me too, I think.
Perfect. Right. A lot of interesting stuff there, guys. So we will get on with. Let me just get this set up. Peanut bladder. Anyway, there we go. That was episode 3 of the season. The man
Mm-hmm.
behind the um more clues. Always more clues. More questions as well. Um, where do you want to begin, Sky?
um, well, I think right at the beginning with they uh, or maybe this wasn't, but I think it was right at the beginning. They come into Ronette's hospital
Mm,
room, and it appears that Bob has been there at some
mm,
point recently because he left some kind of addition to her IV bag
mm,
that could be as innocuous as a blue dye, but could be something else, like maybe some kind of psychotropic um, chemical that is
mm,
now filtering into her body and maybe caused the kind of stress and anxiety that you saw her thrashing around and all that.
mm,
More so than just the emotional shock of seeing the murderer's face again. Left a little letter B
mm,
underneath her fingernail, which they found. So the three letters that were found thus far are R, B, and T, which we later suspect deals with his name Robert,
mm,
or as Leland put it, could be Robertson or something along those lines. And it appears that this is now the connection Cooper is working off of, that the letters are spelling out his name. and he's just leaving the little letters here and there. It would make
Yeah.
sense to me that if Ronette hadn't escaped at some point there, that she also would have been murdered, and the bee would have been left under her fingernail anyway, uh,
Mm.
to be found later as his calling card, just like it was. I believe it was the letter R with Laura, and the
Mm.
letter T with the previous murder.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of interesting that somehow Bob made it into the hospital. Nobody saw him or anybody else there, and was able to do this to Ronette while she was in the hospital room
Yeah.
before she woke up and was questioned.
Indeed. Which seems that it wouldn't have been that much more difficult if to go to all those lengths. That if she was intended to be a victim of Bob, why didn't he kill her then? Unless I don't know. Who can understand his thought process and what any of this means to him?
Yeah.
But obviously he felt it was we can reasonably assume that Ronette was supposed to be another one of his murder victims. For whatever the circumstances were, she escaped, got away, and he followed up. I assume we're like at this point. I don't know. We have an exact timeline, but we're at least 2, if not 3 weeks out after the incident, the evening when Laura was murdered. He's taken that time to place the letter under her fingernail, but allow her to live. It seems
Mm-hmm.
it seems interesting because if he'd snuck in there undetected, changed an IV bag, and slotted this little piece of paper under her fingernail, he could have killed her in some fashion. But maybe that's the point. Maybe not to. We've already seen some ritualistic elements to Laura's murder, so maybe that wouldn't have satisfied his designs to just kill her in a hospital bed by whatever means. But who can say?
Yeah. I honestly don't have a clue at this point, aside from something that I'm going to touch on later that
Mm,
might potentially explain that.
very well.
So let's continue with that one portion, which was Leland coming into the sheriff's department and telling them,
Mm,
I recognize this guy, and he gives him the info about the lake house and all that. And the lead, he doesn't necessarily remember the name, but then thinks about it and comes up with Robertson or something like that.
yeah.
And Cooper then makes that connection to the name Robert and the letters, and that is potentially where the letters are going. But he then also remembers that this character, Bob, would light a match and flick it at him and say, "You want to play with fire, little boy?"
Yeah.
Which is something that a psychotic murderer would say, most definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. He's certainly not. He's not pleasant old man Bob living next door. He's
Yeah,
that's
you want to play with matches, little boy? And I've got some apple pie over here. Come on over.
yeah,
I don't think
quite.
it's gonna work.
So yeah, interesting memory because he seemed to be like he maybe he repressed it. It was recalling it because I don't
Mhm.
think if I that had happened to me as a child, even just once, that's something that would kind of stay with you. You'd be like, oh my god, that remember that time that creepy guy was flicking matches at us. Um, but yeah, the exact wording of course, you want to play with fire, little boy. We have heard that before.
Yep.
Uh, James claimed that Laura said that to him. Um, again, related to this Bob individual. So that kind of there's another clue that would kind of tie in whatever set, however it is possible, the Bob, the individual that Leland remembers from his childhood, is somehow one and the same person, or at the very least, are related directly to the murderer that's running around Twin Peaks at the minute.
And I'm assuming also has a pretty strong relevant connection to Fire Walk with Me.
Yes,
Like, you
indeed.
know, this recurring theme of fire that comes up in various places, specifically seeming to refer to what people are trying to do in a certain
Mm,
capacity. Um, and that could be indicative of like an altered state of mind
mm,
that somebody is dealing with at the moment. Again, I'll get to that in a second, but
yeah.
the this whole introduction of Harold Smith
Mm,
is rather interesting to me. And when I say interesting, I mean not. I actually think it's a poor decision on David
mm,
Lynch's or the writers or whoever, you know. Uh, an addition of this new character that we have not even remotely heard of before
mm,
mentioned, who is an agoraphobic horticulturalist, and he you know only is connected with all of this because of the Meals on Wheels thing. And Laura apparently brought meals to him because he's a shut-in, and then maybe potentially also had some kind of a relationship with this person.
mm,
But and he seems nice enough on the surface. He's got a very calm and kind demeanor to
mm,
Donna for the most part, until of course Donna at the end finds out that he's got Laura's secret diary that
mm,
is not the original diary that we had. This is the real one, you know.
mm.
Um, and I think we're, you know, definitely going to find out some more secrets that would implicate Laura in things that she shouldn't have been implicated in, you know.
Indeed. Absolutely.
So I do think it was a little bit of a mistake,
Mm,
the introduction of Harold Smith, and at this time,
right.
because they could have easily, I think, mentioned him at some earlier point, like maybe even just a passing reference in season one.
Yeah.
It almost seems like
At least it
a late
needs
addition, you know.
is anchored for later. Yeah.
Yeah,
They've it's almost they've oh, we need this plot point. We don't know how to figure that in with any of our current characters. I know, let's just make a new character.
yeah,
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. Uh, for better, you know, unfortunately, for better or
yeah.
worse.
And also Mr. Smith's relationship to the greater scene, where
Mm,
literally next door is a kid that can make creamed corn disappear, and he's just
mm,
busy over there with his orchids. Eh,
yeah.
you know, seems a little bit far fetched even for this storyline.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, we'll see where that goes. Obviously, they're going to develop that in the next episode. What's going on with this secret diary and Smith's real connection to Laura and everything else that is going on.
mm.
Um, and fucking James, man, what the? It's like, yeah, did you not see this coming, lover boy? Did you not see that at some point, whatever you're doing with Maddie is going to ruin what is you have with Donna. Okay, and
Yeah.
if you didn't see that, then you're just purposefully being blind about it. And I get that in the last scene, he's like, you know, oh, my mom came home and she was just completely plastered and whatever else. He's
Yeah.
dealing with
I'm
that.
upset.
And
Oh no.
Maddie gives him a hug, and then Donna walks in. Really? Really? You didn't see that coming, James? You know, um,
And then he has a tantrum about it. Literally smashes a bunch of pictures and stuff.
yeah,
This isn't his house. This
yeah,
isn't Donna's house. This isn't Maddie's house. This is the Palmer residence. He's like, "Urgh!" And Leland's like, "What, bro? You're smashing up my house."
yeah. And then
Terrible,
Storm
James. Sort
storms out.
yourself out.
I I also found it interesting that Donna's getaway vehicle was a Chevy Astro van from the
Oh,
1990s. That's quite the vehicle to just peel out with. Um, and James running after her down the street, Donna, Donna, come back! I didn't mean it. I'm not really a dumbass. Like this is your bed,
really?
sleep in it, man. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
My God.
so yeah, James continues to deteriorate into idiocy, and it doesn't look like him and Donna's relationship is going to be long now. In
Mm,
fact, I found it interesting that Donna then went to Harold Smith for comfort,
mm,
potentially because she didn't think of anywhere else to turn or didn't have anywhere
yeah.
else to turn. But I almost had an instant thought that they were going to kiss or have some kind of like little
Mm,
love interest there before she finds out that he's somehow involved with her murder. um and I was also thinking, that also makes sense from like a soap opera perspective because
yeah.
Donna's on the rocks now. Where is she going to turn
Mm,
to? Oh, the only person that she has an interesting connection with now, and
mm,
what is she going to do with that? Uh,
indeed.
so we'll see. Um, but that entire situation there seems like James in his idiocy is turning to trying to recreate Laura in Maddie. And even Maddie
Yeah.
notes that at the end. She's like, I just came here for a funeral and it feels like I fell into a dream world and everybody thinks I'm Laura. Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
you look exactly like her now and you probably
Yeah.
even have some of the same personality tendencies and all that.
Mm,
Um, so from this point, I'm going to jump into my theory here because I think it also uh, is something to do with this whole concept of what this overarching negative influence is on the people of Twin Peaks. If we are to take Maddie at her word, that what she feels, that she just came for her cousin's funeral and now felt like she fell into this dream state world,
mm,
and everybody thinks she's Laura because she looks, I mean, she supposedly needs glasses, but she doesn't like her glasses anymore, so she breaks them and
yeah.
doesn't wear them anymore. You know, um, it leads me to believe that Maddie's presence is indicative of she actually entered Twin Peaks with the best of intentions, just being a normal person who came
Mm,
in and was going to attend her cousin's funeral, but then fell victim to whatever is applying itself to all of the other people. And
yeah.
because of that, she cannot leave now. She's
Right.
almost trapped in Twin Peaks and becoming a victim of the same kind of foul play. And therefore, the only role that she can play in that capacity is to essentially become Laura and maybe even
Mm,
follow in the same kind of destructive path that Laura followed.
yeah.
Um, and there's some other things that lead me into that theory that we're almost kind of like in this bubble world that encapsulates
Mm,
Twin Peaks, and that is what happened to Gerard in the police
mm.
bathroom. So
Very curious.
what we have there seem to be, after he's showing him his fabulous shoes, he goes into the bathroom. He sees Bob's poster, negatively reacts to it, and says, "I need to go into the bathroom and use my medication," which turns out to be a syringe full of whatever. He injects
Mm,
himself, has a little bit of a seizure, and undergoes a complete transformation into a totally different person. So it seems like whatever this
Indeed.
chemical was, it it uh, it caused a type of mental transformation into a totally different personality, to which he then said, Bob, I'm after you now. And he seemed to be a much more
Yeah.
vicious, much more, um, I don't want to use the word courageous. It's not that,
Mm.
strength of
Mm.
resolute character, like far more decisive than the ambling, uh, doesn't really know much of anything Gerard. It seems
Mm.
like now he has transformed into Mike, who is
Right.
Bob's friend,
Mm.
and is now,
Yeah.
for
It,
reasons we don't exactly know, after Bob.
Indeed.
Um,
And then obviously lost sight of him after that point.
yeah, and
And later on to that, when his presence was mentioned to Cooper, uh, he obviously Cooper was like, "Oh, the one-armed man." Oh,
mhm.
checked, and then he feels that the giant's third clue of without chemicals he points is directly related to Philip Gerard.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you specifically. I mean, I know how this is going to go, but
Mm.
what is your takeaway on the difference between without chemicals he points? So without taking this altering drug, he points to something. What is he pointing
To
at?
some kind of clue.
Right.
Um,
And but with the chemicals now, Gerard has become Mike, and is this otherworldly influence that is on a totally
yeah,
different path from Gerard.
it it could be not as specific as that in the sense that it's not with or without the chemicals. That's just somehow related. Um, in the fact that maybe whatever drug that is he's taking for his seizure somehow just calms him down. He doesn't necessarily facilitate or necessitate the change of personality from Philip to Mike and or back. It could just be that was a strangely worded clue,
Hmm.
or maybe not. We'll
Yeah, without giving it away.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully they'll track him down and get some answers out of him. Because I don't know what happened after that scene. He just disappeared without all his shoes, or Sheriff Truman lost interest, wandered off. Philip came back. Mike came back. I was like, oh, I better gather up my shoes and head out.
Yeah,
or what exactly?
I'm assuming all the shoes are still there in the conference room,
Right, yeah, from his
because
because of his state of mind.
Gerard now Mike doesn't give a shit about
Mike
that.
doesn't give a shit
He
about
just
shoes, does
left.
he?
Yeah.
No, he's on the lookout for Bob, apparently.
Hmm.
Um,
or
yeah,
or more
indeed.
likely, it seems to me he knows where Bob is, and he's going
Mm,
after him for some reason.
yeah, seems
Um,
like it.
maybe just to team up with him again or something like that.
Maybe,
Hmm.
maybe.
Um. So from that point, I think I also want to jump to Nadine, because this seems to be
Yeah,
an
of course.
episode of transformations. And Nadine, who
Mm,
took a bunch of pills and was in a coma. This is the first time we've seen her, I think, since
yeah.
episode 1 of the second season. So we didn't see her at all last episode. And she, the the really interesting about this thing about this is everything that we saw in that scene with Nadine could be explained by the large amounts of adrenaline pumping through her body.
Mm,
Like, we hear some things about how, a mother is able to gather the strength to lift a car off of her child,
yeah.
that sort of thing. Nadine actually broke the chains, not ripped
Yeah.
off the side of the bed or, got out of the restraint somehow. No, the chains broke on both sides. And for a while
Yeah.
there, it looked like she was going to completely crush Ed's hand.
Right.
And Ed doesn't know what to make of all this, but then she comes out of it, and it seems like, the adrenaline could be an explanation for that, but more than likely, it
Mm,
seems to me, given the nature of some of the other things that we've seen in this episode, and the chemicals and the hospital food and all this, that she had something in her system already that
mm,
was causing her to be the way that she was, batshit
mm.
crazy, and she took the
Maybe.
pills and it activated something else in her to cause large amounts of adrenaline, and now she wakes up, and the kicker on all of that, she doesn't understand, like, she's had a complete mental breakdown and believes that she's 18 and about to
Yeah.
go do cheerleader tryouts,
Yeah. Yeah. She's either
and clearly doesn't
regressed
remember anything.
or
Yeah.
no, or she's just completely under delusion. She's she believes she is 18 years old again and at high school.
Yeah.
And Ed's like, she seems to recognize that Ed is her presumably boyfriend. Obviously she wouldn't think they were married, but yeah, obviously Ed is confused to say the least.
Yeah.
Let's hope that this is just a weird temporary thing, and she'll be back to normal, as normal as Dean can be,
Yeah.
uh, shortly. But I'll have to keep an eye on her.
Um, and then from there we jump over to Audrey, who
Mm,
is being held hostage now by Blackie and Emery. They tied her up. They're videotaping it, and they inject her with drugs, which Blackie
mm,
makes clear are the same drugs that Ben Horn gave to her and caught
yep.
her under the spell and made her become addicted to this sort of thing. So now they're and it seems like the premise that they're building with that is whatever this drug is, it
Mm,
is a drug that builds addiction extremely fast. So
yeah.
within one dose, you're gonna wake up from whatever and want more.
Yeah.
And then we get the introduction of Jean, Jacques' brother,
Mm,
who seems to be like the cleanup man.
mm,
Him and Blackie's sister are here, and now they're going to clean up the mess,
yeah.
and at the same time get revenge for Jacques' death. So they're putting together this plan where Emery is going to get Cooper to come to One Eyed Jack's in order for Jean to take him out.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he's not I guess from his perspective, maybe holds him accountable,
Hmm.
Cooper accountable, even though he's obviously not directly killed him. Um, he's like the nexus of all the misfortune that has befallen the Renault brothers. So he's wants revenge, and he wants a cut of the profits. So obviously that's their plan to try and get some money out of Ben Horn and to hide the fact that it was them
Right.
responsible for it.
Almost seems like Blackie is using this opportunity to kind of take One Eye Jacks away from Ben,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that would suit her very well because
right,
she's been there a long time. She runs the place. It's just Ben owns it, and obviously more than that has a direct hold over her. So if she could break that, she'd obviously feel some measure of freedom. Um,
and
and obviously at the end of the day, Ben's a businessman, so if he's offered a certain amount of money, he would sell anything, wouldn't he? But
right. Although I got a question, given his conversation with Cooper, exactly how much he
mm,
values his daughter,
right.
and the life of his daughter. So Blackie may not be getting the deal that she wants out of that.
No, indeed.
She may be
She may be making too many
overestimating that.
assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I find that rather interesting. And also it occurred to me. I mean, this probably was evident in the first episode of season 2, but it just now occurred to me because I'm a little slow on the uptake. You see, um,
Of course.
the
We seem to be doing all right.
um, Ben. and or Jerry are the sole providers of this drug.
Mm.
So it occurred to me that Blackie this whole time is dependent on Ben specifically for the drug that she requires to feed her addiction, and at the
Yeah.
same time, this is likely the same drug that has been feeding some of the other echelons of this organization and keeping everybody under his control. So
Mm.
we see this drug being fed to Audrey now, who is going to be addicted from this point forward, or, we assume so. Um, any of the other girls that worked the perfume counter, because it seemed like they had this process by which a candidate was identified, put at the perfume counter, maybe then fed this drug that got them addicted
Mm.
to it, and then moved to One Eyed Jacks, where they became a service girl essentially,
Yeah.
held there by the dependency on the drug, just like Blackie is.
Yeah.
And that would be an easy way for Ben to retain control of this organization that otherwise might fall apart easily because of somebody going to the police or something like that.
Yeah. Of course.
Um, it also occurred to me though that this drug might be part of the bigger conspiracy of what actually has a hold on the people of Twin Peaks. The hospital food,
Mm.
the blue substance in Ronette's IV, the various iterations of people apparently going insane or crazy at various points
Mm.
with no other regular explanation. Um, if that's the case, and then I got to wonder about the drug distribution model that was there primarily with Leo and Bobby as like the bottom distribution man. What were they actually giving? Was
Mm.
to the people of Twin Peaks, and what kind of was it laced with this other thing that isn't necessarily what would be found in drugs that are being distributed in this manner, and what kind of
Mm.
effect that had on the people. Um, so that all just kind of randomly occurred to me, and maybe a
Yeah.
direction that this is going. Um, then the hypnotizing of Jacoby with his
Mm.
fucking Hawaiian bullshit. Um, the interesting uh, thing about that was only that he then actually remembered the face of
Yeah.
Leland, and that was used then
Mm.
as essentially testimony, evidence to then have Cooper and Truman go and arrest Leland at the end of the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Which is, of course, the cliffhanger for the episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got to imagine Leland's character at this point is not really gonna fight that,
No.
because even he could maybe mount a defense, in self-defense he did this, or trying to kill the person who murdered his daughter that he thought at the time, and he was wrong, but that mitigating circumstances, so to speak.
Yeah.
I
Of
don't I
course.
don't think with his personality the way it is right now he's going to put up a big fight with this and try to lie his way out or
No.
anything.
Doesn't seem like it, but I have to say he seemed for, for the brief moment we saw him react, he didn't seem too phased by it. He was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
He wasn't immediately protesting it or acting shocked or in disbelief or whatever may be the case. He was like, "Oh, okay, I guess."
Yeah.
Just have to see what he says about that, because clearly they're going to need to interview him.
Yeah. That in itself was, I mean, a nice draw for episode 4, where we're really trying to find out if Cooper is well aware of and has more than enough, besides just Jacoby's advertising testimony, more than
Yeah.
enough evidence to place, and maybe Leland then admits to the murder at this point. They're going to, go to this mode where that part of the mystery is wrapped up, but we're still trying to, solve these other portions of it, and how is it related. They're going to try to question Leland and say, what do you know about the rest of this,
Yeah.
which to me connects a little bit back to the fact that Leland seemed to have at least some knowledge about what was happening to his daughter before her death.
Yeah.
And maybe he has some hidden information there that needs to be revealed, and he's willing to do so now that he's no longer in a position to keep it secret.
Yeah. Potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
But as I said in commentary on episode 2, the most important part of this entire episode was the continuing saga between Lucy and Andy, and the introduction of yet another character that I really, really like, with all probably the entirety of my hatred for this entire series is now revolving around fucking Dick Richard Tremaine, who...
So you hate him more than Bobby and Leo and
Yeah.
Hank combined.
Yeah, exactly.
Dick Tremaine. He's
Hank
such a
is
polite and upstanding gentleman, though.
Hank is an angel compared to Dick now. And oh my god, like I gotta hand it to Lynch. At least he poured every bit of the stereotypes of rich, elitist asshole scum into this guy. You instantly get that notion just from the way he looks.
Yeah.
Upon appearance,
Before he's even spoken.
Yeah, before he's spoken or anything, just the look on it, the shit-eating look on his face, and his clothes and his mannerisms. Kudos to the actor for portraying that very well, but my god, and what the fuck is Lucy even thinking getting involved with this guy?
Yeah, good question. Good question.
That is like a serious lack of consciousness,
Yeah.
on her part. That
Yeah.
somehow she got taken in by this guy, and to the point where 2 bottles of champagne and a Horns betting department bed later, she's now pregnant by this asshole. And yeah. So it's just like, no, yeah, all of the... Bobby is perfectly fine now and can live as long as this asshole dies. But, I mean, oh, man, I can't even fathom Lucy, such a sweetheart, being taken in by this. And now placed in the worst position possible.
Yeah.
Because of that indiscretion. And having to deal with that. And poor Andy on the sidelines, having to deal with this whole situation from his perspective.
Interesting saga, which there'll be far more to that, no doubt. But yeah, again, it seems to be an overarching theme of the series. Most people in Twin Peaks have terrible taste in romantic partners. They always end up with the wrong person, or people, or then they're leaving this person and they're cheating on this person, or they really want to be with this person.
That's easy because half of the townsfolk is evil. It's like, oh, I'm with this person. They're on the wrong side. So of course they're a terrible person, and it's a terrible relationship.
Indeed. Yeah, you definitely get that vibe, don't you? That there's an indistinct but definite line in the sand somewhere between good people and bad people. The good people are really good. The bad people are really bad. But it seems that the individuals themselves are not even fully aware of who
Yeah,
of this distinction themselves.
yeah, exactly. Which also leads me to believe that there's, negative influence over the entire town, possibly through this chemical dependency thing or whatever.
Mm,
Um, Nothing has been said thus far about the water supply in Twin
mm,
Peaks.
no.
And I got to imagine maybe that's going to come into play at some point. It can't just be through the hospital food because that's not going everywhere.
Mm,
Or maybe it is to some degree, but it's that's only one branch of it.
mm,
Um, there's definitely something to that. It just isn't quite apparent what yet, I don't think. Um, but the other interesting fact about this scum asshole is that he is the menswear designer at Horn's department stores. So, based on his personality and his relevance to the ongoing or overarching theme of this empire that Ben Horn is running, I got to imagine he's got some connection to that.
mm,
Um, there, there's no way with his personality that he just has no relevance to the evil side of things. That
yeah.
that one of those branches is the Ben's department store. Um, so I am imagining that at some point we're going to find out some more of that potential connection there, and
Indeed.
it doesn't speak as opposed to previously where Lucy and Andy's story didn't seem connected to anything else. Maybe it is now
Now maybe it is. Yeah.
because of this fucking dick. You know.
Yeah. I'm glad you were such a fan of him. Look forward to seeing more of him.
Yeah.
Uh, what else?
I look forward to
I've only
seeing
got
him dead.
maybe we'll see. Have you got anything else? I've just got a
I
couple
swear
of
to God,
points.
as much as I was opposed to a redemption story for Bobby, if they try to redeem Dick at some point, I think I'm going to have to
Not
find
having it. Have to
Lynch and tell him,
and
what I
have
think.
yeah, have a few words.
Hmm?
um. So yeah, just wanted to mention I like the scene with Donna at Laura's grave when
Hmm.
she was having the conversation with her and said a couple of things of note. She said she admired her strength and courage and wanted to be more like her, but it kind of I don't know because that word and it wasn't worth the cost. Like, look where it got you. Oh yeah, something about you're so smart with this stuff, but so stupid with other things. And then obviously getting angry at her because she's like, "We, you know, I loved you, but I was, the focus of our relationship was us always trying to resolve your problems, and then we're still doing it even
Yeah.
after you're dead." Um, Obviously, I guess most of that was just her being upset from earlier on in the day, having seen James and Maddie together for the first time. But still, kind of quite telling to them what their perfect, almost sisterly like best friend BFFs relationship between the two of them might have been like before. Again, much like everything in Laura's life, it might not have been as perfect as it was presented.
Well, more so than that, that seemed to be a very interesting revelation to me that Donna was essentially saying there that the relationship between her and James and Laura before Laura died, they were
Mm,
always trying to solve Laura's problems. And
yeah.
like I've known people in my life like that where all you talk about is their problems,
Mm,
and it's always, kind of focused on them, and
right.
negatively speaking, oh, okay, we're doing this again. We're
Mm,
trying to solve your problems. And if all of the focus was on Laura and her problems, that means that no focus was ever on Donna or
right.
James and their problems, and Donna is just now coming to this epiphany and saying this to
Yeah.
Laura in her grave. We're still dealing with, it's always still about you and your problems.
Mm,
Um, so not only was the relationship prior to her death a facade in that regard, that it wasn't so perfect, and there was this anxiety and stress between them, but the clearly the relationship was focusing on Laura and everything she was doing that was causing her problems,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that
Indeed.
that 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 to me was a little bit of an interesting revelation about not only that it was a facade, but this is the nature of their relationship prior
Mm,
to all of this, and James still loved her
yeah.
through all of that, despite all of that.
Indeed. Uh, Interesting little scene between Shelley and Truman and Cooper. Obviously, they want her to give a statement, and she's just no, I'm not willing to. Cooper sees through it and feels that obviously she's doing that because she's after the insurance money, but correctly in tunes that it must be somebody. It's not just Shelley. Shelley wouldn't have come up with this on her own. Um, and it's like, well, fair enough. Good on you, Shelley. Good luck with that. I hope it works out. I feel like it's probably not going to.
Right.
Get back to us when we can actually help you, and you can actually help us. Um, final thing I have for the episode is Albert. You seem to enjoy his brief scene with Truman, where yet again he insults Truman, and Truman's like, he's like, bro, we're about to throw knuckles. Um, and we kind of get a bit of a revelation to Albert, a bit more insight into his character. That yes, he is very focused on his work, and he's got no time for anything other than absolute efficiency. And this backwards hick town is to his absolute distaste. But we see a bit more into his own philosophical workings, in that he's like, yes, I may be brash and coarse and vulgar with you, but I'm on a mission here. I'm trying to do a job, and I believe in pacifism and love to all. And he literally tells Harry he loves him, uh, much to his shock, presumably. Um, I got the impression you liked that from Albert.
Well, Albert is probably, and despite the insults and um, the attitude he puts on,
Mm,
I could see right through that. And Albert is
yeah,
probably the character I identify with most, and I'm
excellent.
pretty sure you as well, because we're also very similar in attitudes.
Yeah,
But you know, I didn't necessarily see that, but it makes
mm,
sense from a perspective. If you've got Albert as a personality who not only is he extremely focused on his job, why is he focused on his job? And it's
mm,
because his life view is that everything that you people are doing over here is shit.
yeah,
Stop with the bullshit and let's focus on this that is
mm,
going to be in the best interests of everyone. Oh,
yeah,
Sheriff, you want to drive your fist into my face in this act of violence and vengeance and retribution and all that. That's great. You're acting like an uncivilized animal like everybody
mm,
else here while I'm trying to solve the case and bring
yeah,
justice. So what are you doing, Sheriff, with your life? And
yeah,
Truman, to his credit, I mean, he's a kind individual, but he's also a Neanderthal in
yeah,
that respect. He doesn't understand that despite all of the insults that um uh, what's his face? I just lost his name. Um, Albert, it
yeah, Albert.
stands for civilization,
Yes,
that it's just insults, and he's insulting them because he sees a far better way to live his
yeah,
life than just going around dragging your knuckles on the ground and
yeah,
going, oh, let's eat some more donuts.
Yeah.
Um, he's insulting them because he sees them as a hindrance to what he feels is true civilization. And I have readily felt that, especially in the last
Mhm.
10 years of my life. So I greatly identify with his character in his world and outlook of view. And yes, he's insulting and brash and crass and all of these things, and that leads to the Neanderthals going, okay, well then we're just going to have to beat the shit out of you and teach you a lesson. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
You're proving my point. Yeah.
Yes. So I definitely greatly identify with him, and
Mm.
he clearly suffers in kind of like the same way that the personality of Sheldon Cooper in The Big Bang Theory is presented as
Yeah.
this person, this sociological anomaly who doesn't understand social norms and how to get along with the rest of society, and it's because they literally are on the next brilliant level that says, you guys are doing this all wrong. Why can't you see this? And they get
Yeah.
so frustrated and
Yeah. Yeah.
can't communicate properly.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I feel not that certainly not a genius, but I feel I can relate to that at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's everything I had for the episode, Scotty. I don't know if there's anything else you had.
No, no, that's pretty much it.
Excellent. Well, Urchins, thank you for remaining here to the end with us, sir. Greatly appreciate you being here. Thank you also to Veronica and Feifu for stopping in and hanging out with us for a bit. We'll be back next week, same time as always, for the next 2 episodes. Laura's Secret Diary and The Orchid's Curse. So
And
they
and
were. I'll be definitely.
and also I want to note here that by the end of the month here, I should have completely re-uploaded my archive to YouTube, and all of
Ah,
these episodes should be
excellent.
available at that point too.
Nice, Scotty. Look forward to it.
So,
All right, fellas, been an absolute pleasure. And of course, yeah, Scotty, I'll see you tomorrow
yep.
for the special on your channel. Yeah, I think, yeah, you'll see detailers of that around Urchins if you're around, buddy. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon, guys. Take
See
care.
ya.